Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Tahir Dhindsa and you're watching SDTV. Millennial change is being observed. If someone say that it's just another phase in industrialization, I think it would be difficult to agree. This renewable is very quickly making the conventional means of energy redundant. Fossil fuel or wood or the other fuel that would produce smoke and everything was prevalent since the human being uh, discovered fire and started using it at its will. Now these renewable are putting that all, I mean, making it redundant very quickly, quicker than than what we expect. And important thing is that the global financial system at the moment depends on it because OPEC treats through reserve currency as dollar, and the international prices affects the largest country, the superpower, on its monetary side, on its fiscal side even, because ultimately it depends on the prices at the gas station depend. So it's very deep and it's a big revolution which is taking place in front of our eyes. When you talk about renewables, obviously there are dam and electricity, but solar has taken Pakistan, I mean, like a wildfire. Every rooftop, when you drive around in the street, you see that is filled with the solar panel and all that. But it has a weakness that during the night, the supply side becomes crumple if you don't have the batteries. So, supple with it, additionally, you need batteries and the storage system of electricity with that. So, battery, which is called a battery electric storage system, BESS, is another discipline which has taken place, and in Middle East and other countries, Saudi Arabia is taking lead. A telecom company, Hawaii or Huawei, whatever you call it, has established a full-fledged vertical for this battery system in Middle East and all that. We have arranged a program to discuss what are the connotation of solar system and from where the finance would come, because it is going to replace the whole global system ultimately. I mean, to a very major extent, to the extent where it would have the major input in our energy import and consumption and other things as well. We have invited today two very prominent guests, and in Lahore with us sitting the chairman of the Pakistan Solar Association, Mr. Waqas Musa. Mr. Musa, very warm welcome. And in Dubai, we have invited Mr. Rizwan Razak, who's the Chief Technological Officer with Huawei, and most importantly, he's looking after the technical side of the vertical we have just talked. He has not joined us yet with certain complications with which technology often brings at the 11th hour, but I hope he'll be in a position to join somewhere during the program. So we start with Mr. Musa. Mr. Musa, very warm welcome. Just say something on this as a broad answer to the broad questions which I have just raised in the intro, as a basic premise very shortly, and then we'll rumble on the further discussion.
Thank you so much, Tahir Saab, for your kind introduction. The points which you raised, or the points which you touched upon, I would say, are uh, uh, quite interesting and quite important. It's not just a passing fad, or it's not just a passing trend. What we're seeing is that with the current technology where it is right now, solar becoming the cheapest source of electricity generation, power generation, energy generation, uh, is 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 by far the most cost-effective way of adding power for any undertaking, whether it's on a utility scale level, government level, or it's at a private sector level, or it's a commercial level. So the big challenge which comes is that we have solar, which is producing energy during the daylight hours, whereas our consumption is more skewed towards the evening hours, or at least you can say 24 hours, where a lot of the time is without the sun. So how do we transfer this energy from daylight hours to 24 hours during the day? And that's where the battery energy storage system, the BESS system, as we talked about or as you introduced, comes into play. So it's a very important and critical junction or stage in the life cycle of what the energy business is going to look like in the future, or the energy infrastructure is going to look like in the future. And I think this is the point where we are going to be having discussions about the how the hybrid systems. When I say hybrid, I mean systems which have solar as well as battery integrated together, either as separate components or as one component. I mean, that's at the end of the day, design decisions. But the overall concept of how these things will come into being, and then what will be the dynamics of the sector, what will be the dynamics of how this will be financed, how it will be implemented, how it will be paid for. Electricity traditionally has been paid for in a very you can say an old way, which is that you pay for electricity as a consumer per unit of electricity that you consume. However, if you look at the cost point of view from the power sector, the cost is mainly a fixed cost. So although the mechanism of payment is mainly a variable cost. If you use 1000 units, you pay for 1000 units. However, the costs are very fixed. A big chunk of the costs are fixed. So that creates some challenges in terms of how the pricing is going to change as well. Again, that's something which need to be discussed and aligned and discovered as we go along. So it's an opening for a very interesting discussion, and I hope we'll have some time to cover a few points out of that today.
I was just thinking, I mean, just a casual question. We need a lot of structure for these big changes that take place. For example, for electricity, there were grids, powerhouses, transmission lines, distribution system, transformers, everything. And that was investment from the public sector. The fiscal space was needed. From the fiscal side, the taxpayers' money was channeled to do all that. But since this solar and all that, that is very obviously, that is very less government. Most of it's a private investment by the corporations or from the pocket of the ordinary citizens at the household level. So, how do you think? What do you think? Where from the finance for this much, this big change would come? Do you think the banks and the other financial institutions are ready for that?
It's a very deep question that you ask, and there's many different facets which need to be looked at to answer this question. Let me try to start by making a parallel. In any country, also in Pakistan, there is a network of roads, which is typically known as motorways or highways, whatever you want to call it, and there is an authority which looks after them. And then on those highways, there is goods which are being transported from one country to the other. So if we take this parallel and we start thinking about the electric network as well, the grid which we have today is like a highway, and there is producers who are the power plants who are producing. In the past, what used to happen was there was like producers were the major, they were big producers and they were separated. Either they were government-owned plants, which was the past, then Pakistan transferred away towards something called the IPP models, where they were independent power producers. So these were independent companies, usually private sector. There might be some public-private partnership with 25-year, 20-year, 30-year concessions. Banking and financing was also involved in there. So they were producing, and then on the other end of the highway were the consumers, which were houses, offices, factories, farmers, whoever wants to consume. So there would be electricity getting on the highway on one side on the grid, and then getting off on the other side. And in between, you have a lot of infrastructure related things, the transformers, the grid stations, and so on and so forth. So if you start looking at it the same way, what's really happened now is that we have moved from a unidirectional highway or a one-directional highway where there was one producer and everybody else was consuming, or a producer was specific and a consumer was specific. Now we've moved to a model which is called distributed generation. So generation is spread across various parts of the node, many, 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 many parts of the node, and the grid is like a highway. But now it's not just a one-way highway. There is traffic flowing both ways. There's big roads. There's small roads. So if you take the same parallel, try to bring some sense into it. So there is an owner of the grid, which is actually the National Transmission and Dispatch Company, which is called the NTDC. We've heard about it. So NTDC in Pakistan and then provincial level counterparts of NTDC actually own the grid. Then this grid connects different entities. These entities are called DISCOs, which are the distribution companies which own the front end, which is the distribution to the customers. So there is multiple suppliers of electricity and multiple buyers of electricity. So this sort of structure or this sort of mechanism is what the future of the grid is going to look. And it's up to us on how far up in the ladder we go or how advanced we go in terms of the way we set up our structure. It depends on the thinking of our regulators. It depends on the thinking of our businesses, the private sector, the public sector, how well we make policies, how we make policies today, which keep in mind the reality which is going to be expected to see in the next 5 years, 10 years. Batteries today are a reality of life. What part of the grid are they going to operate on? Yes, we have been seeing, I would say, lip service, but not lip service. I mean, some efforts have been done by NTDC in terms of battery planning. Honestly speaking, I think we're far behind. We need to declare a battery emergency. We need to decide. So, for example, if you have a question of a battery, where are you going to place it? Are you going to place it inside cities? Are you going to place it on each grid station? Are you going to place it on the major choke points? So these are things which need to be decided, which need to be answered. How are you going to regulate these batteries? What is the level of standards which they need? In some cases, we can get some info from European countries or Western countries or other countries with slightly more advanced level versus us. But the reality is we're doing this for the past 20 years. So this is something where we will have to do some invention on the way. So this is something which it's not just something where we can search and. So as I was saying, one other very important aspect is the technological, um, the financial part of the tech. How are we going to afford this technology? So can the private sector play a role? Of course it can. There is similar to the IPP model, the independent power producer model. We will need IPB, IPBESS, or whatever you want to call it, independent BESS models. But this model needs to be put in place. It needs to be written down because this is something which needs to be regulated. And that's why, once again, as I'm saying, we need to have a battery emergency. For example, if I were to go and request, let's say I have a partner who's willing to put up a 100 megawatt hour BESS system for the Pakistan grid at a concessional rate. They have the product available. They're also willing to put it in place, and then they will take some loans from the banks. Now the question is that how does the banking sector take it up? Does the bank say no? This is something which they're being Pakistan. Very well likely the banks are going to say no. This is something that the SBP being the State Bank of Pakistan has not yet regulated. So that's why we cannot give you a loan. This is the typical style of banks in Pakistan and the typical style of
Right.
bureaucracy in Pakistan. So this is something which we need to work on. We need to improve this, but it definitely can be done. It's very much doable. It's very practical, and it's very much a requirement. And I think this is where we need to get our act together.
Right. Musa, we have a certain audience with us, although it's a recording, but they are listening to it and they're sending their question live. One of the listener, Mr. Omar, has sent a question. What are localization trends of hybrid PV BESS models in Pakistan? Are SMEs going to start assembling manufacturing in coming 2 to 3 years in aid of the solars and other things?
The answer is a very big yes. There is a big localization trend which we are seeing, and there's a lot of interest. Now, is this interest going to translate into real implementation on the ground? We are already starting to see, I believe, at least 15 or 20 different manufacturers have set up at least assembly plants set up already where they've started producing. You are getting product which is assembled at least in the local market. A few of them are in Lahore, a few of them are in Islamabad, other parts of Punjab, similarly in the south of Pakistan. So definitely there is a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest from the Chinese manufacturers. There's a lot of interest from Pakistani entrepreneurs, businessmen, SMEs who want to get into it there. So the answer is definitely a yes. It's happening, and you're going to see more and more of this happening because there are certain things where we are a captive market, so we have a market which has a lot of requirement for this. So it makes a lot of sense for these manufacturers to put in their plants over here. If I may add on this, after answering, going beyond the answer of the question, or beyond the question which was asked, should we do it? Yes, we should. How should we do it? I think one of the most important things which we need to keep in mind is that this is a potential export opportunity for us. Today, Pakistan is the leading market in the world in terms of distributed generation deployment. So, unlike other markets where there is a lot of utility scale, in Pakistan we have a lot of distributed generation, on the ground. People are doing it in their homes. Similarly, we are seeing the trend in batteries. In a lot of the other markets, we're talking about utility scale batteries first. In Pakistan, we're talking about small scale batteries at the same level or perhaps even bigger level than the utility scale batteries because the numbers are very big. It's the lower part of the pyramid, and as you go down the pyramid, the base is always going to be bigger. So you're seeing a huge number of consumers, and we already have the UPS culture in Pakistan. Every house already has a UPS, uninterrupted power supply built into it. So people are familiar with batteries. They know how to use it. They understand, what's the concept of a backup load, what's the concept of the grid load, and things like this. So these are things which make us very much in a right market for deployment of these hybrid PV BESS models as well. And we are seeing this happening. So there are other markets in the world which are at a similar stage like us, or even behind us in some cases, which in general, as a collective term, I can use the global south terminology, that the global south is markets which are going to have similar trends as us. So if we can set up this manufacturing base quickly, effectively, with the right competitive advantages, and this is a key thing. We don't want to make the same mistakes which we made with the car industry, where we have had an infant industry which is now 30 years and still an infant. Every time we talk about import from outside or removing regulatory duties, we have hues and cries raised from all parts of the car industry, the automobile industry, and we have no exports to show. Whereas on the hybrid BESS systems, the battery systems, we can take the lead if we plan it right and if we are strategic enough about it, where our ambition should be to become one of the big export markets or become one of the big exporters who can export to all of Africa, MENA region, Southeast Asia, why not even Western Europe, Eastern Europe. So we should be aiming for that level. I think we have the technical competency, we have the market availability, we have proximity with China and interest from Chinese manufacturers to invest and diversify their manufacturing operations. So if we take this and you can say, if we play our cards right, we should be looking at this not just as a localization for Pakistan market, but also as a potential export product or an export area where we can be competitive. So we should plan it this way.
I think the program is getting longer. I come to the last question, and I know it would be very difficult for you to answer it in a very comprehensive way. But if suppose I'm a household which consumes 400 units every month, what is the economic or financial probability or feasibility for me, preposition for me, if I want totally grid to go off and use lithium ion batteries and solar?
That's a very interesting question, and this is a question which we deal with almost on a regular daily basis almost, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's about planning your energy requirement. The answer, and we will try to give you a short answer because we have a limited amount of time in this segment. In general, so for example, for a household like that, if it's 400 units a month, so that's about 15 units a day. 15 units a day of electricity requirement on average. So what you're looking for is a solar system of about 3 kilowatts to 4 kilowatts. In fact, sorry, 5 kilowatts of solar. So you need about 5 kilowatt of a solar system where the production. So this 5 kilowatt of solar system should give you around 20 units a day. And in Pakistan, between 18 to 20 units a day. So that should cover you from a requirement on average basis. And then you would need to couple this with a battery. And assuming some of these 20 units are going to be used in the day, 5 to 6 units in the day, and then it depends on how much independence you want from the grid. If you want to be completely off the grid, you should put in a battery bank of about 20 kilowatt hours because it covers you for sure. There are going to be some rainy days, there are going to be some stormy days. What we would recommend is not to go completely off the grid. What we would recommend is to leave the grid connection on and minimize it. And you have a target of, let's say, you use the grid on extreme days, because in a whole year, Pakistan is blessed with sunshine. Maybe 300 out of 365 days, it's going to be good sunshine. You're going to be fine. But there's going to be a 2-3 day cloudy or a rainy spell or something like this, where the solar production will be down. So at that time, you could use the grid. Or sometimes, if there's a certain increase in requirement, for example, if it's over or something like this in house, then you can use the grid. So the grid remains. So what happens is it's changing. Previously, the grid used to be the main, then the backup, and then whatever else. Now the grid moves down, solar, backup battery, and then the grid. So the grid becomes the backup. So the dynamics have changed completely. So you would be looking at a system of, let's say, around 5 kilowatts to 4 kilowatts of solar panels, maybe two batteries of 5 kilowatt hour each, and the relevant inverter and wiring and related details. So this should give you, I would say, roughly a cost of maybe a million or so. And this amount should be recovered within a period of around 4 years. So it's an ROI of 4 years, and then you will be more or less off the grid, but not completely off grid.
Right. So just a cursory question, and you can ask, you can answer as a yes or no. Are the banks ready in Pakistan?
Absolutely no.
No.
Unfortunately, no.
So you need to have homework with them, or you need to identify some sort of a collateral, or what is the requirement? Because it has to be from the manufacturing side. Why would the bank would bother then?
It's a little bit of both. Banks in Pakistan are very conservative, and they're also very full. I mean, they are more than happy to eat off the government bonds and the secure kind of lending, where they're making all the money in the world. So they don't really have to make an effort to do anything more difficult. So that needs to change, obviously, but that's not just for the solar industry. That's for the whole country, I think.
Do you think you need a regular dialogue with the banks, like this sort of a discussion to catalyze?
Yes, absolutely. Because what happens is that, yeah, we need some counterparts in the banking industry who want to make a change. If we can find those people, engage with them, and they can engage with us, and I'm sure there's people like that, will then pioneer these efforts of convincing the state bank of what's the best way to collateralize batteries, what are the requirements, and things like this.
Waqas Musa Sahab, thank you very much for giving us time and talking to us, and for the benefit of the public, general audience. And obviously they are going to be consumer. All of them has to embrace the technology like we did after the PTCL telephone. Now everyone is on the smartphone. So if this knowledge is there, it's better for them. Thank you very much. And for audience, last line is, the change is up to you. Change is not going to stop. It would be best if you sum up your homework and do the footwork and join it as early as possible. The front runner will gain most of it, manufacturing on the supply side and on the demand side. But with this, we come to the end of the program. Unfortunately, our second guest, because of the technical facility or probably internet overseas, he could not join. But we promise you we'll bring more program on similar subjects. Bye for now.